Today, on a special episode of Seattle Sports Scene, we will be taking a deep dive into what we expect out of the Mariners this offseason, looking at potential trades, free agency signings, and in-house discussions to cause an overall discussing of the Mariners roster as we look into next year and beyond. Let's get into it.
A drive deep to right field, down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1.
Drops back. He's going to throw down the middle. He's got a man. The ball is caught.
Game over, baby.
Touchdown. The game is over.
With a shot blocked. Eberle in front for Schwartz. They score! Hey, hey! What do you say? Ground early. Now the cross out to Door. What a save by Fry!
Seattle sports fans, what's going on? We're back with another episode of the Seattle Sports Scene. Kind of a special episode for you guys today. We're going to be just focusing today on the Seattle Mariners, a team that we have not touched on for the first two episodes of the Seattle Sports Scene. The Mariners have a lot coming up with some off-season signings, possibly some trades if that may happen, and just a lot of names getting tossed around about who could potentially be on or off of the team. Kind of some news around the MLB around itself. So a lot of thoughts here from Seattle Sports Season and I, who I will now introduce into the pod. What's going on, man? How's it going?
Yeah, so I know that on my page, I've gotten a lot of requests to do this episode. And so rather than try and squeeze it into a normal weekly episode, we decided to just make this its own little special as it was voted on the Instagram poll by you guys. I'm super excited for this. I put a lot of time and studying into it, so I hope that you guys are able to just enjoy this episode and enjoy our thoughts on what you think the Mariners should do this offseason. But before we get started about that, let's just wrap up the end of last season a bit, as they've come out with some of the yearly awards here. Last night it was announced that Cal Raleigh and Dylan Moore both won Gold Gloves, which is really something that is so exciting for this team. Cal 100% deserved it. Demo also 100% deserved it. I was a little surprised that he got the award over Mauricio Dubon of the Houston Astros, but nonetheless, absolutely thrilled for Dylan Moore and the recognition that he gets from national media. He's deserving of it. His ability to play every position is so valuable for the Mariners, and him to just be able to fill in whenever there's injuries has really helped the Mariners over the last few seasons. Huge Demo fan, huge Cal fan. Cal was also nominated for the AL Catcher Silver Slugger Award. That finalist, he's one of three finalists. They will be announcing the winner at a later date, but congrats to Cal on being a finalist for that award too. Honestly, it's going to be kind of a toss-up. It kind of just depends on what voters care about more, power or average and all that stuff. But even if he doesn't win it, an awesome offensive season from Cal, and defensively. Any thoughts on the awards and stuff before we get into the episode?
Well, congrats to Cal Raleigh. He's been robbed of the Gold Glove Award 2 years in a row, in my opinion. And I think he should win the Silver Slugger as well. I think it's another award he's deserved at least last year. Leading catchers, I think 3 years in a row now, but significantly leading catchers in the last 2 seasons for sure. Demo, I was also incredibly surprised that he won that award. I 100% think he's deserving of the award. But like you said, I thought Dubon was going to win that award. I thought somebody else might win the award. But good on Demo though to get recognized on a national level. I think he's an incredibly underrated player and just fits in this Mariners team so well. So, just super excited to see some Seattle Mariners bringing home some hardware.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so here we go into the meat of this episode. To start off, this is not what we expect. This is not what we hope is going to happen. This is more of a realistic style approach this offseason, kind of understanding how the Mariners ownership and front office and trends that they've shown us over the past few seasons led to some of these decisions and choices that we made. That being said, I would love it if the Mariners went out, signed Pete Alonso, signed Juan Soto, signed Alex Bregman. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's realistic for this team, and it's not consistent with what we've seen from this ownership group in their tenure here in Seattle. So again, these are realistic options for the Mariners this offseason based off of patterns that we've seen in the past. So just to start off with, there's 5 players currently on the Mariners roster who had decisions to make about this upcoming offseason. Yimi Garcia, an unrestricted free agent. He will not be back. I would be shocked if the Mariners made any attempt to sign him in free agency. He was kind of just a blow up in your face type of trade, unfortunately with injury. I think Jonathan Clase is going to blossom into a really nice MLB outfielder, and I think at the end of the day, we're going to look back and regret that trade. But in the moment, it was the right trade to make. No regrets. But definitely are not going to be seeing Yimi Garcia back in the Mariners uniform next season. Justin Turner is also an unrestricted free agent. We will talk about more about him later, as in my opinion, the team should absolutely re-sign him. Jorge Polanco, it has been announced that the club has chosen to decline the $12 million club option on Jorge Polanco. Jorge Polanco is now an unrestricted free agent and also will be talked about later. Mitch Haniger, he picked up his player option as expected. The Mariners will pay him $15.5 million next year, which is way too much money. And Luis Urias elected free agency as he was given that option. So that leaves the current roster today. Catcher is Cal Raleigh, first base Luke Raley, second base Dylan Moore, third base Josh Rojas, shortstop J.P. Crawford, left field Randy Rosarina, center field Julio Rodriguez, right field Victor Robles, DH Mitch Garver. On the bench you have Leo Rivas, Mitch Haniger, Dom Canzone, and Ryan Bliss. Starters you have Gilbert, Kirby, Castillo, Wu, and Miller. And in the bullpen you have Munoz. You'll have Brash, who was announced that he's throwing back in Arizona, which is huge news for the Mariners to get Matt Brash back next year. Santos, you'll also have Troy Taylor, who is fantastic to end the year, Colin Snyder, JT Chargois, Gabe Spire, and Taylor Saucedo. So, what are your thoughts on the Mariners' current construction of their roster, and what players do you hope to see back on the team next year?
I would absolutely. You've got to bring back Justin Turner just to start. You got to bring back Justin Turner, a player who, despite the fact that he was batting really well for you, brought a great veteran presence and leadership to that team. I'm sure brought great energy and excitement to the locker room, and really I think can just help carry this team in a attitude perspective. I also think Justin Turner is somebody who probably wants to be a coach of some sorts, and I could imagine that if he comes back to Seattle on a short-term deal, it's maybe more of his audition to coaching than playing. I can imagine we'd see him more in that leadership position rather than being the person who's hitting all the home runs or in all the big spots. Like, don't get me wrong, he played great for us in some of those big spots last year, but I think next year would be more of an audition to coach. Yimi
sure.
Garcia, you don't really need him back. At the time, the trade seemed like a good idea, and it kind of worked, but I agree. I think in the long term, we're going to wish we hadn't given up Jonathan Clase for that, which is just unfortunate, but at the time, good trade at the time. You do have Matt Brash coming back, so yeah, I think that's definitely helpful with Garcia going. Your starting lineup, obviously, in my opinion, is still the best in the league, so really no need to panic there. Your bullpen, one or two pieces maybe needed, but we'll touch on that later. As far as the hitting, again, we'll touch on all of this later. I'd like to see one, maybe two bats in there that are like potential average hitters. Most of this Mariners team last year was not really hitting even average. And I'd like to see some players on this team that can really get some hits when needed, so we don't go on those long streaks where we had so many players who were not getting any hits a game or getting one hit in a series. Love to see some more bats on this team that can provide that. Again, we'll touch on that later. And then Mitch Garver, obviously, yes, Mitch Haniger, you're obviously paying him too much right now, but I think we're probably closing in on Haniger's time as a Mariner. and maybe his time in his career. So I imagine this is probably some of the last of Mitch Haniger that we're seeing. But that's kind of my thoughts on the current roster.
Yeah, and to go along with that, Mitch Haniger, just because he accepted his player option does not mean that he's going to be guaranteed a roster spot out of spring training. He's still going to have to earn that. He's still going to have to earn the right to be back on this team. But at the end of the day, he is owed that money. And honestly, it's right for him to be paid that money because he is deserving of that based on his career and what he's done in it. So props to him and his agent for getting that deal done. And unfortunately, the Mariners are now the team that has to deal with that contract. First, before any free agent signings, talk about that, trades, the number one priority for me this offseason is in-house extensions. Because the most valuable thing you can do this offseason is extend Cal Raleigh. I honestly do not care if who we sign. We could sign Juan Soto, and maybe Juan Soto makes the offseason a success. But if you don't re-sign Cal Raleigh, I don't know what you're doing. Because he is one of the best catchers, if not the best catcher in the entire league. As you can see, as he just won the Gold Glove and potentially the Silver Slugger as well, which would make him the best catcher in the American League. And he deserves to be paid like it. You need to give that man a blank check and sign whatever dollar amount that he wants. Honestly, his impact on this team is not measurable, like, by any dollar amount. What he does for this pitching staff, what he does for the young arms in the organization, what he does in hitting in the middle of our lineup, not to mention he's a switch hitter, which that just seems to go under the radar. This guy is unbelievable, and honestly, he should be one of the highest paid players on this team for the significant future. Like, behind Julio, honestly, behind Julio and the guy that I'm going to talk about next, this Cal should be right there as one of the top 3 highest paid players on this Mariners team. The guy that I'm going to talk about next, Logan Gilbert, needs an extension. Right now, he's your best pitcher. He's past Castillo. He's past Kirby. You saw that in the dominant. You saw him touch 100 at points last year. The splitter is nasty. The slider is nasty. And next year, if fully healthy, I expect him to be one of the favorites to win the Cy Young coming into next season. There's no reason why he shouldn't be able to win the Cy Young. You need some run support, obviously, to get the wins, because apparently wins still matter to voters nowadays, which I don't agree with, but what matters matters. But he is so dominant, and he's going to deserve to get paid like the ace on a competitive team. And so between Cal and Logan, you're going to have to shell out a bit of money, and you're going to have to be okay with that. And unfortunately, that's going to have to come out of the free agency budget, but me personally, I'm fine with that. If the money goes towards Cal and Logan, and then we get some not as high quality additions in free agency, I will be perfectly fine with that, because these guys should be at the forefront of the Mariners front office and their ideas right now. So there's other guys obviously that are deserving of in-house extensions, someone like a George Kirby, but for me right now, those are the 2 guys that you cannot afford to lose, because you promised fans a rebuild, and you promised them that when these players came up, you were going to be competitive. And so these are the players that are your core. These are the players that, through your rebuild, were the ones that the fans were looking forward to seeing in the major league level in Seattle. And so you promised these fans that these players were going to be here, and so now it's time for you to carry out your end of the bargain and to sign these players to Seattle long term. Because that's what doing a rebuild means. You have to commit to these guys long term if they turn out to be the stars that you expected them to be. So for me, number one priority here is in-house extensions. What are your thoughts on these extensions? And just, do you think that George Kirby is deserving of an extension at this moment in time, or would you still like to see a little bit more out of him?
I'll touch on that question first. I would be okay with the Mariners going either way, with extending Kirby or giving him some time. There are rumors going around right now that if the Mariners want a legitimate, serious bat, that Kirby is one of those players you would potentially trade for that bat. I'm not necessarily saying that I would like them to do that. I would be devastated to part ways with Kirby. But I know that he and Castillo are currently trade possibilities for getting a bigger bat. Kirby more than Castillo, obviously. I would be okay with extending Kirby now. I would be okay with it. I think he's had some ups and downs. But for the most part, he was he was better than Gilbert at some parts of the season this year, but Gilbert was just for the better part of the season, just better. I would be okay with extending Kirby now. I would be okay with not. Either way, I know the Mariners know what they're doing there. You need to extend Cal. I not much else to touch on that. For me, you said everything that I believe word for word. Like, hand that man a blank check. Let him ask for whatever he wants. This man is a leader on the team. He is, in my opinion, the best catcher in the league. At least top 3. And currently, at the current state of this roster, I think is the best player on the team. You got to bring a player like that back. Cannot let him go ever at all, but get the chance to extend him out right away. Logan Gilbert, same thing. He's just getting started. You got to bring him back for sure. Like, we haven't even seen the best of Gilbert. He is still young in his career, in his pitching, his mind for the game, and just learning. Like, it's can't explain it. You got to bring Gilbert back. So I agree with you on all those takes on who to bring back.
So looking forward at the roster, there are some pretty clear and obvious holes. So we're just going to kind of go through each position and discuss the Mariners' current state of the position and what we think the Mariners should do to improve that. So starting at catcher will be Cal Raleigh. Even if you don't get an extension done, he's still under contract. There's not really any conversation to be had, obviously. No need to get someone else, and your backup will still be Garver, as he signed a free agency deal here, and he's still owed that money, so you can't really get rid of him without eating that money. And honestly, as a backup catcher who hits against lefties, he's not an awful option, especially as we saw last year. His defense began to come along throughout the year. So that's my thoughts on catcher. First base, you have Luke Raley, who can play at first base. However, Luke Raley, in his best, most ideal position, is still a corner outfielder. He's athletic, he's fast, and you don't really get to use Luke Raley's skill set when he is playing first base. However, that being said, if you do re-sign Justin Turner, I think the best play there is to let Luke Raley and Justin Turner split time at first base. Obviously, as you face a lot more righties in the season than lefties, Luke Raley will dominate the time at first base. But as we discussed earlier, Justin Turner needs to be back on this team. His veteran leadership is immense. You saw how much he loved the city. You saw how much he loved the fans, how much he loved playing for the team. He's one of few guys who actually has said that they would be willing to come back to Seattle after being traded here. So you really just need to take advantage of that opportunity and re-sign him as soon as possible. And honestly, I expect that deal to be done in the first few days of free agency, because I don't think there's going to be much to it. I think the numbers are pretty set in stone. And really, it's just going to take Turner to sign the contract, and he's going to be here in Seattle for at least next year, but maybe even I could see a 2-year deal for Justin Turner. Second base, I'm not going to lie, I was pretty fully convinced that they were going to pick up Jorge Polanco's option, just based off of everything that we know about this front office group. It was not very expensive, just $12 million. You only had him for 1 more year, then you didn't have to pay him. It seemed like a pretty easy solution to just bank on the fact that Jorge Polanco was going to return back to his career averages just a bit. And yet the team declined his option. And so really, you're left with only a few different choices. Option 1, you go sign a free agent. That's the most easy option. Primary second basemen, however, are hard to come by in this free agency class. Gilbert Torres he was just playing second base for the Yankees. They did not offer him a qualifying offer, so he is going to be a free agent. To me, he's not worth the money. Also, you have guys in the minors like Ryan Bliss, Cole Young, Cole Emerson that are going to be close to the majors. So there's no point in signing someone that's going to be here long term when you have those guys that are so highly seen upon in the Mariners organization. The other guy that's out there is Ha-Seong Kim, but really he's just kind of a more expensive version of Dylan Moore. His best ability is his defense, and as we saw, Demo has amazing defense as he just won the Gold Glove. Um, Other than those two options, it's just a bunch of older veterans who had negative WAR last season, and those are not going to be a good use of money. That's not going to make the Mariners better. So I don't really see them finding their option as a primary second baseman in free agency. Option 2 is use your depth in the minor leagues. This would assume that you either have Ryan Bliss or Cole Young starting at second base on opening day. Don't get me wrong, I love Ryan Bliss and Cole Young. Like, huge fans. I think they both could be super productive major leaguers, especially Cole Young. He could even potentially be an all-star caliber second baseman. However, the pressure that you put on a young guy like that who is not an established big leaguer in Ryan Bliss's case, and a guy that's never seen the major leagues in Cole Young, to be an everyday starter out of spring training is just, it's a lot of pressure, and I don't know if that's an optimal solution for many guys. Even the highest recruited guys, like we saw with Julio, like we saw with Colby Mayo on the Orioles this year, like we see all around the majors, these guys need time to learn and grow and not have the pressure be on them. They need to have a lineup surrounding them that can carry the pressure so that when they struggle, they don't get criticized by fans. They just have the space in the at-bats where they can learn to grow into their role in the major leagues. And right now, this roster is not constructed because if either of those guys come up into the major leagues, you're going to be expecting production out of them. And so for me, I don't love the option of going to either of those guys to be your starting second baseman. Both of them could probably grow into that role later in the season. However, to start it off, I just don't like that. Option number 3, trade. Jorge Polanco, just like Jorge Polanco a year ago, you can go out and find someone via trade. If you were going to trade for someone, it would be probably someone nearing the end of their deal, as you have those guys in the minor leagues that are just about ready to come up. Looking around the league, second baseman who will be free agents after next season. Basically, there's just 2 that are available, I would assume. That's Isaiah Kiner-Falefa on the Pirates and Brendan Rodgers on the Rockies. Again, neither of those guys really moved the needle for me more than Polanco did. I think if you were going to get a guy like that, you would have just stuck it out with Polanco rather than having to give up assets to get one of them via trade. Ultimately, what I think the Mariners should do in free agency, I think they should go sign Jurickson Profar. Jurickson Profar is a free agent right now, coming off a breakout year for the Padres. He can play virtually every position, but his primary positions would be shortstop, second base, and left field. This gives him a great amount of versatility to the depth on your bench if somebody gets hurt. But I would have him primarily playing second base. Last year, I know this is crazy for Mariners fans, but he hit 280 with a 839 OPS last year, including 24 home runs and 85 RBIs, hitting in the middle of the Padres order. He's going to be expensive, but I don't think he's going to be as expensive as some of the other guys because of the track record of his career and his older age. He's kind of struggled throughout his career until breaking out last season. But he's everything you want in a hitter. Last year, he had a 15% strikeout rate, which would have been one of the best on the Mariners lineup, and he had 11.5% walk rate. He almost never chased, being in the 90th percentile for chase rate on Baseball Savant. He walked a lot, hit for power and average, and overall, he was one of the most impactful hitters in baseball, and you saw that in him getting nominated to last year's All-Star game. He is an awful defender, quite frankly, but I have faith in Perry Hill to work some magic like he did with Jorge Polanco and Gino Suarez in consecutive years. He turned Polo, who was an awful defender, into a league average defender last season, and he turned Gino Suarez from a guy that couldn't play defense at third to one of the best defensive third basemen in the league. Also, Jurickson Profar is a switch hitter, which is nice to have. you have to bank on some regression after a career year, but between the versatility and the value in the bat, I still think it's worth it to give him a bit of a long-term contract. And even if you do give him a long-term contract, once you move Cole Emerson or Cole Young up to play second base, he's still available to play left. He still can play third. He could play short after JP leaves. So there's just a lot of options that you have with him. So for me, it's Jurickson Profar at second base, Turner and Rayleigh at first, and Cal Raleigh at catcher. So what are your thoughts so far on the first half of the Mariners infield heading to next season?
Well, going back kind of to the beginning, I do think that Luke Rayleigh was pretty good playing first base last year. He obviously had a couple moments where he struggled. But Rayleigh and Turner, I think, is a solid first base setup there. And worst case scenario, your emergency option is using Tyler Locklear, who I don't know if I necessarily want him up yet. But like I said, emergency option if one of Turner or Ridley gets hurt and you really just can't go get anyone else, can't move anyone else over, next man up, it's Tyler Locklear. He had a fun little stint here in Seattle when he came up last season. And I would not mind seeing him back here again, getting some reps, even just as an emergency option or as somebody who's regularly in the lineup. Polanco getting passed up on was shocking to me as well. He must have really not impressed the management, even with all of his pretty strong finish at the end of the season. I was pretty shocked to hear that they did pass on that. I really thought they were going to pick up his option, but obviously they didn't. It's going to be interesting to watch the battle in spring training between Ryan Bliss and Cole Young. Just see, I think between the two of them, just who can prove that they can be that next man up option, or even prove enough that they can be a starting option there at second base. As we know, this is a big question mark, as you were just talking about, of who to put there at second base. I also think neither of them gets called up, since, as you said, you don't have a solid team surrounding them to help them grow. This team is unfortunately not quite ready to help those youngsters. I think they don't have a good safe spot to kind of grow in their hitting and in their fielding. Like you said, the team is going to be expecting results immediately. Let's see. Both guys that you mentioned, aside from Jurickson Profar, are both really, they're like good contact hitters, but not power hitters, which is something that I think that this Mariners team needs. I don't think we always need to be hitting those home runs, especially in a park like T-Mobile. But if they were free agents, I'd say, yeah, going on one of them. They both got, high 200 batting average. They both don't chase too much, and their strikeout rates aren't very high. But in my opinion, I'm not going to be trading for either one of those players. That being Brendan Rodgers and Isaiah Kenner-Falefa. Jurickson Profar is somebody who kind of went under my radar, I'm not going to lie. I did not know he was a free agent. I do think that you could probably turn around his defense despite him struggling a little bit. I do like that option, though, and I actually would be all in for the Mariners going for that option. Although, would you be playing him at third or second? Because his natural spot is third base.
Yeah, he kind of plays everywhere.
Okay.
I don't know exactly, but I know he's played pretty much every position throughout his time in the major leagues. So ultimately, that's a decision that they could make with ownership. Because as I'm about to talk about, I guess I can just go into this right now. Third base, I project that Rojas and Demo are going to split time at third base, doing a bit of a platoon there. Just because I want another third baseman, but quite frankly, the options are awful. It's Bregman or bust, really. And Bregman is never going to play in Seattle.
No, he will never come to Seattle
for life. He probably goes back to the Astros, maybe, I don't know. But he's not coming to Seattle. He doesn't want to hit here. He doesn't like the fans. He doesn't like the team. It would take a massive overpay, and that's not something that we're going to do. Other than that, the only other free agents that play primary third base is a bunch of sub 1.5 WAR players who personally I don't think are that much better than a combination of Rojas and Demo. it could be an option that you could play Jurickson Profar at third. You could Rojas was a second baseman when we originally traded for him from the Diamondbacks. Obviously, we know Dylan Moore can play second, so you could move Rojas back, but I think they'd probably keep Jurickson Profar at second, and then put Rojas and Demo at third, as we've seen that Rojas can play some excellent defense at third, and he's been working on that for the last few seasons now. So I don't see any reason why they would switch him back over to second. For me, that's third base. Shortstop, basically it's JP Crawford again. Hopefully he can just stay healthy. I expect him to have a bounce back year. I know he expects more out of himself than what we saw out of him last year, but really between his injuries, he was just never able to get into rhythm and be a productive player. I don't expect to see 2023 JP Crawford, who finished in the top 10 of AL MVP voting again, but somewhere between that 2023 season and the 2024 season is what I expect out of JP Crawford. The outfield is going to be exactly the same. I hope so desperately that opening day we see that smiley, happy, bubbly outfield of Randy, Julio, and Robles, because towards the end of the season, you could just see the bond that they grew with each other, how much they loved playing alongside each other, how much fun they were having in the outfield. And that's what I need to see on opening day. I need to see them run out on the T-Mobile Park and bring the energy. I believe that since the Mariners traded for Randy, they knew the cost of him when they traded for him. I don't think they were going to pay what it took to get Randy Rosarina into Seattle if they weren't going to pay him again right now. So I don't think they're going to ship him off somewhere else. I think if they make a trade, it's going to be with one of the starting pitchers, either in the major leagues or one of their minor league depth pieces like Emerson Hancock. Additionally, in the outfield, in this scenario, you have Mitch Haniger, who can play in the outfield. You have Luke Raley, who can also play in the outfield. Jurickson Profar can play some outfield. Dylan Moore can also play outfield. So you have a lot of other options if these guys need day off, or if you run into injuries. You also still have Dom Canzone, who probably will start the year in Tacoma, where he finished last season, or just based on matchups, depending on what you like. So lots of versatility on your bench, guys that can step in and play in the outfield, but it should be Randy, Julio, and Robles on opening day. Finally, at DH, I think the Mariners should go sign Jock Peterson. He's an older guy. He's going to be a little bit expensive. He has the name record. He has the name brand. He's been a really good player in this league for a long time, and now as he comes to the end of his career, but last year he was fantastic with the Diamondbacks. It was really underrated signing by the D-backs. It was really kind of just a prove-it contract, and Jock Peterson proved it. So he's a left-handed bat. He destroys right-handed hitting. I think he'd fit perfectly into the Mariners' right-handed heavy lineup. He can platoon with Garver at DH. He never has to touch the field, so you don't really have to run the risk of injuries. He can literally just sit in the dugout, go out there and mash right-handed pitching, and that's exactly what the Mariners need out of their DH right now. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the Mariners, on the Mariners lineup going into next season. Any thoughts on the outfield and DH before we head on to the pitching side?
I'd love Jock Peterson. Not much else to add onto there. I would just like him. I think he would fit really well on the team, and I've talked about it with some Mariners fans. I've talked about it with you. I think it would just be a great piece on this team to have him. Talking about shortstop, JP wasn't healthy and had a pretty awful year. However, defensively, he was still really solid. I think. I would love to see him bounce back hitting wise, as he finished like bottom of the team in average, in home runs, which I know that JP isn't always a power hitter, but I would just love to see a good bounce back here from JP this year. The outfield is super fun to watch, and I'm excited to hopefully see a full season full of those three guys playing out in the outfield. I was disappointed that we weren't able to see Julio immediately play with Randy last year, but that's kind of a weird complaint, seeing as we saw them play most of the end of the season together. But I felt like it was just cool to see, like, just the little things that were like Julio teaching Victor Robles how to do the Mariner dance after the games, and then they were both teaching Rosarena, and it was just the energy out there is just so fun, and it brings a excitement to the team and to the players. And they're just so fun to watch. What else? Yeah, I think that's really all the thoughts that I have on the outfield. I love Canzone and wish that I could see him in Seattle. I mean, I have his jersey. Like, absolutely love Canzone. But on the plus side for me, I live like 30 minutes from Shady Stadium where the Rainiers play, so I'll try to catch a couple of games this season, and that way I can see him in person playing for the Rainiers. So looking forward to seeing that.
Looking over at the pitching side, obviously you expect to have one of the best starting rotations in baseball. They're young, they're hungry, they're ready to play. I bet you they'd want to start the season in a month if they could. I think all of them have a bit of a sour taste in their mouth after last season because they really held up their end of the bargain. I expect big things from them again, assuming everyone stays healthy. Knock on wood, but honestly, nothing really to talk about the starting rotation. The depth is good, the starters are amazing, and I look forward to seeing another year of all of them as they continue to develop. The bullpen, I think, is also in really solid position. For me, you just need a better lefty. Saucedo and Spire both had great 2023s and really bad 2024s. So for me, I look at an option like Jalen Beeks. He was traded to the Pirates in the middle of last season. Despite not having great numbers overall, Baseball Savant really likes him. He produces a lot of weak contact, similar to what we would have saw out of a 2023 Gabe Spire. Almost nobody can get a barrel on him. On all pitches last year, he had just a 4.8 barrel rate. I see him replacing Sauce and Spire in the bullpen. So that's really it for pitching for me. Just bank on your rotation being dominant again and just get one or two bullpen pieces, and you should be really set up for success. So after that, looking at the roster for next year, catcher Cal Raleigh with the back of a Mitch Garver. First base is Luke Raley, Justin Turner. Second base, Jerkson Profar, and I project Cole Young to make the team. Third base is Josh Rojas, Dylan Moore. Shortstop, J.P. Crawford. Left, Randy. Center, Julio. Right field, Victor Robles, Mitch Haniger. Your DH is going to be Mitch Garver and Jock Peterson. Starters, Gilbert, Kirby, Castillo, Wu, Miller. Bullpen is Munoz, Brash, Santos, Troy Taylor, Colin Snyder, J.P. Chargois, and Jalen Beeks. That's your 26-man roster. I think that's a really strong group. If you look at the batting order then, against righties, you'll have Robles leading off, Julio hitting second, Randy third, Cal, Jock Peterson, Profar, Raley, Rojas, JP. So you get a really nice mix with having righty, switchy, lefty. So that's a tough lineup for a right-handed pitcher to navigate when your only two right-handed bats are going to be in Robles and Julio, who are both extremely talented. Against lefties, you'll have Robles, Julio, Randy, Cal, Turner, Profar, Garver, Dylan Moore, J.P. Crawford. Again, righty. Switch hitter, righty, switch hitter, righty, lefty. So a really nice balance of switch hitters, right-handed hitters, left-handed hitters. I think having that right-handed lineup where you have Raley hitting seventh, I think that's just a testament to how strong that lineup could be at the beginning of the year. Obviously a little bit weaker against lefties, but I really think that this team could be good because as we saw last season, you just need a league average offense. You don't need to go out and create a top 5 offense out of nowhere because at the end of the day, that's just not the way you're going to construct your team playing T-Mobile Park. You have the pitching, you have the bullpen. Go out, just sign one or two bats, maybe trade for a bat. And I think this team could be really special next year. I don't think they're as far away as some people on Mariners Twitter and online make it out to be. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world if we don't sign a Pete Alonso, a Juan Soto. I think this team, with another year of Dan Wilson, with new hitting coaches, hopefully Edgar can stick around in some capacity. You saw the team's potential at the end of last year where their offense was top 5 in the league for the last month. They just needed that breath of fresh air, And so for me, they're not that far away. Just a few little additions here and there to just bring some new faces in, bring some old faces back, and I think you could see this team really, really go on a special run for next season. So what are your thoughts on just the roster in general as we kind of close up here?
Just a quick touch on the starting pitching. Just want to put it in there for the record. Brian Wu will surprise everyone this year. Mark my words. And not surprise everyone this year by like, oh, he was good. I think Brian Wu is going to be lethal this year. Just a hot
he
take
was lethal
of mine.
last year.
Yeah, no,
He
absolutely.
was really good.
He was solid last year. And, dare I say, I think he could be even better. I think Brian Wu has the potential to be up there with Gilbert for like, he has such incredible talent and skill. He is somebody who just in the future, anytime soon would not want to let him go. I think he could be a huge piece to stay here long term. But I think this year he's going to be absolutely lethal there on the field. And I think he's going to turn some heads for sure. As far as the bullpen, I'd like to see one more lefty in there probably. Spire and Saucedo had some tough outings, and also you'd like to have at least one more, maybe two more lefties in that rotation. I cannot wait to see Matt Brash back. I missed him this year. He was somebody who I was contemplating getting a jersey for, and then he got injured, and I was super disappointed about that, which led me to get the Canzone. But that's another story aside. I just can't wait to see Brash back. I think he's got some nasty stuff. He's got some nasty stuff, and I can't wait to see him. I was super excited today. Jumped out of my seat when I was like, oh, he's throwing. I'm super excited. And yeah, there's no need to panic.
To just be the cleanup guy is something that the Mariners missed so much last year. How many times is it the 7th inning you have one out, two guys on, Matt Brash just comes in 2/3 of an inning, strikes out both guys that he faces, and all of a sudden you're chilling once again. He's so impactful for the starters. Just their ability to like go deep into games, knowing they have that protection of Brash behind them, because he's just so good at what he does. And
Solid.
So I'm great guy. Some of the most amazing stuff you'll see in baseball with that slider, with that sinker, the fastball. So I'm also so excited to have Matt Brash back next year.
Yeah, I just can't wait. And as you said, like Mariners fans, there is no need to panic if they don't go out there and get the biggest name superstar player or somebody who you're like, everyone knows who they are. They're just an incredible player. Like this team did prove last year that the offense can work together. They need a little bit of fresh air, as you said. They need a little bit of a push from some of the newer players coming in, some of the switching and coaching. I think Edgar Martinez helped a lot, and I think what he taught here while he was with the Mariners is going to carry over into the season as well. But there is no need to panic if we don't go out there and sign a huge name. I know everyone has their frustrations with the management and ownership. I have some myself as well. But I think this year the Mariners are set up for some pretty good success, so long as we can fill the little holes we have in the team right now, and just get some offense going. We know this rotation can do its job and be the best in the league. We know this bullpen can rise to the challenge and keep bats down late in games. It's just a matter of getting that offense going, and I think the Mariners are more than capable of doing this year. So big things coming. I'm super excited now. I want Mariners baseball back. Let's bring spring around.
Too.
Let's bring spring around. I'm ready for spring training.
Yes, sir. Just a few months away. Just 4 months away till February. But there's still so much more to look forward to surrounding Mariners baseball before then. With that being said, we will be covering all the moves that the Mariners make this offseason on the podcast. However, if you want to see the results, see the coverage real time, I'll be covering it all on my page at Seattle Sports Season. So just a little plug there. I'll be posting a whole bunch of my thoughts in the moment. I know that Kraken fan page, he posts a little bit about the Mariners on his story, but obviously focusing on Kraken. So if you want to get my thoughts and opinions in the moment, as after the deals, if you want to talk them over with me, make sure you come hit me up on my page. Feel free to DM. I do my best to respond to all my DMs in timely matter. But until then, until the next episode, thank you guys all for listening. Hopefully tomorrow morning, with it being Monday night right now, hopefully we wake up tomorrow, we get some good news surrounding the Mariners this offseason. And as always, go M's, go Sounders, go Kraken, go Seahawks. And this has been another episode of Seattle sports scene.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you next time.